Good morning, everyone. It is August 4th. I hope you all had a good long weekend. As always, Premier will start us off with his overall update. Dr. Patterson is going to speak to the next steps of Nunavut's path. We can get into questions. And just a reminder, this is our last scheduled weekly update for August. Thank you.
Ula sa kulumi August 4, nungo ani kuta khubea sulaw to chagalo ako si sibulik to kalimalaw tilugo luta Patterson o kalimalanga yo kanu matu paglian ak no hindi kambalo apek susit takko ta na loking ulik pangulang ayo tabani August mi to sakit siya katarningan
mi ublaku chapa pe tana nuban na yo 19 Nunavut ilwani ngito holi tana kubenak to amamana mutikin lugo takwa kawi hakto himayo nuwang yo 19 kangi mangata 1825 ama 272 ni huli utakiyubut an nyangi mangata ikpakani ulaw to takwa Nunavut government kuni ngid to kakalaw mata tana Nunavut Public Arts Initiative tana hanangwa galuhok to nutak na kinaw yak tao tao yudwa takwa hanangwa galuhok to uktok to lwa kinaw may 5,000 may piga lugo 50,000 mutikid lugo tana kinaw yak atok taw yudwa hanangwa tinu hilamit tunut hanangwa angi yung hanangwa pata ubaluba taw tu kanak tichik pata mumek tunik ubaluba tagayaw ti leo tanginik takwa kawiga kanak tulwa yudwa tu takwa pibale tichikut hibaner lutit ubaluba titira mayano lutit amatakwa titaw himayukut tana Iqaluit gov.nu.ca dahil na backslash lingayo public art ubalubat titira wenu kawiga mek tu luak ditakwa hanang wakaluhok tunu amma hanat talaw ganik pat Monday August 10 gulak pat takwa government titira wingit ukwel nila mata kituluk tanut inuluk tanut nunum miunut takwa malitsak tu takwa ikana yaktulira yikut WSCC peko yang ini atau orang ini ta ukuran na lang mata mandi ulakpat amma kawi mako yung atana tuhar ka nyatana kingun lapang ulang man August mi anok ngalang niya ata kihan inuban na yo tikir lang na pat ubaluba huna may adlangon na nakpatakwa piga ko ma miyut amatakwa Nunavut miu yakay tichikanera wasugutakwa malitsara kakaptigutakwa ublalwa tangina agabut ang mitsata luwit ama anyang na rawit ay himamealit hanayak tagilutit anit tangilut anyang na rawit tana nuwan na yo 19 man na ulak to kawi mayaw na kaulang mat kanok anyang to huga kang mga ta kitut anya guna ka mga ta tana kapya nak tu wala kaya Nunavut mi ukaw tiwak kapya hungil titakwa Nunavut mu iti lang napat kahoy man nakaw lakap takanutan na pilararan niya mga aptigo matakwa malit siya aptigo takwa peko yawiyot tana ay toloy lo lang inapta ama anging lilang isunitan nubad na Nunavut mu iti latwa napat makingun lakpamenta ko Nunavut miut aw yakat siya na po he menagat siya lo he lipini amata ko inokativut menagat siya lo pit siya lo ataw he katigilo ta ko be hugta pinaput maknaw yo hinala siya ta kape Nunavut miut. Good morning. There is still no confirmed or probable case of COVID-19 in Nunavut. The total number of persons followed to date is 1,825. There are still 272 currently being followed. Last week, we announced the Nunavut Public Arts Initiatives to encourage artists to create space for community members to use, to see, or enjoy. Under the theme of Inukatigi Tiamnet, artists can access between $5,000 and $50,000 to cover creations and installations of their artwork. I encourage Nunavut's artists to visit gov.nu.ca /public art for more information or go see your economic development officer in your community. Starting Monday, August 10th, the Government of Nunavut offices will be reopened to the public. Our offices are following WSCC guidelines, and we are happy to be able to welcome Nunavut back to help with program and service delivery. As you know, we will be taking a break from these weekly updates for August. If there are any changes to COVID-19 situation in Nunavut, we will be back on air quickly with all the important information. In the meantime, please keep up with the recommended public health measures. Wash your hands often, keep physical distancing, and stay home if you are feeling sick. COVID-19 is serious, but if we remain educated, prepared, and diligent, we have the ability to manage any case and limit the spread. Lastly, for Nunavut, stay well, stay healthy, stay safe, and enjoy the rest of the summer, and we'll see you soon. Goodbye.
Good morning. As we continue to work toward Nunavut's path, I am pleased to announce changes to travel restrictions that will aid government representatives in their work serving Nunavut. Effective today, the following amendment has been made to the travel restrictions order. Member of Parliament for Nunavut, members of the Legislative Assembly of Nunavut, and Senator for Nunavut can be exempt from isolation provided they submit a written request to the Chief Public Health Office. The intent of this amendment is to allow government representatives to conduct official government business and fulfill a constitutionally protected mandate.
Ulla sakut kayo sige ako tilutan Nunavut matuya padlaning anik hobe apong analo na sigur na kamasi jek taw na tilugit aw lahat taw na mud esulit ta beauty taw yut ikayo ko taw na alo te government kuno kigatokti iqanayangin ni piyet siram na Nunavut meuni ullu mi pigar luni ko aqigar taw na aw lahat taw na mud esulit ta beauty taw yun tilisid juti usmayumi maligali obedjo ami kigatokti Nunavut Nunavut mi maligali okti amalo ito ko mi kigatokti Nunavut mi takwa induto gato kay nakataka to jang ito tunisis malutik titikati go to tsira mi ana hamnang ito liri ko labing ano tatso mapidyo tinga kaya ko tiyo takwa government ko kigatokti ngit government ko ni pilira tsani kamagunat sa hulugit ako lo tung averjo sa podjaw sa mayo mi pidyo timi pilirit sa akong nakulugit.
This exemption only applies to official travel necessary to conduct parliamentary, legislative assembly and constituency business, and does not apply to travel for personal matters. It also does not apply to government representative staff or family members. This exemption is optional. Government representatives included in the amendment may choose to complete the 14-day isolation when traveling on official business.
Tana ko yan ataw kay nasimagutiyo yok to ka nga ni apto ta ko kanaya kay luti aw la hatilugit so lumaligali og video ami og baluno na bumaligali og bingani am malukig gatok temino pijit si raw te khaloni tana to ka nga ngito aw la hataw nak mod imme mod inusam mini pijut te khaloni to ka nga ngito lugaw makko kigatok tingita kanaya tingita kanaya tingin not ilangin no lo ni to ka nga ngito tana ko yan ataw kay nasimaguti nalay ka ko tiyo kun nakto government ko nikigatok tiyo yuta ko akiga ko tayo yung muta ko nirwarong na medyo unlo ni 14 inuto kay na kumagutik aw lalawngin na minik kanaya karluti.
Upon returning from official business, government representatives who have been granted an exemption shall abide by the guidelines in place for any individual who has been granted a critical work exemption. This means that for the first 14 days in Nunavut, they should respect social distancing when at work, isolate at home when not at work, wear a mask when separation cannot be maintained. These people should also self-monitor and contact health if they exhibit any symptoms of COVID-19. Thank you.
Tako tisimalirti kanayari simalarluti gavamak kwikiggarturtingi taakko akhuyanaaru kay narsimayu maligiaharayartu malittaugialinni kinakkutuinarnut taakkunu kanayariartunu khuyanaartu kay narsimagutinik taana tukilik taakkunu sivullerpaani ulluni 14 Nunavut tillugit emailiornaartum ujjassut saarluni inuuqattigiqaniluattailimagiaharninginni kanayartillugit inutuuqattarluni angiqqamini kanayangituaraiguni ammalumit matuarsimahattarluni taanna khanigiyaharniatuaruni inuuqatimini taakkua nammini qawiyisatsaariaharniarmi yuqawiyikkailutilu aanniaharnangittuliriyikkunni qawiyituaruti khaniigutaqarsoriguti nuvajjuarnaq 19 mo
Ken Driscoll, APTN National News. Dr. Patterson, we've gone through the schools a little bit. I'm wondering, with the schools reopening, what specific advanced cleaning are you recommending for the schools? What's the standard they should be trying to reach here?
Ken Driscoll, APTN kunnikluta Patterson taakko ilinnaarbi matiikkannilaarnerartaulertillugi hanuittunni kissuni salummarsailgiallaqiggiaharnermu atulequyissimari.
The big thing for all public buildings where there's a lot of traffic, and this obviously applies to schools as well, is that high-touch areas, especially door handles and places like that everybody has contact with, or many people have contact with, should be cleaned twice a day. The best recommendation is a solution of dilute bleach and water. It's wiped on and let sit for a minute and then wiped off, but there's other options. Sorry.
That's okay. Taakko hanit pijutigillugi kikkituinarnu upattauga juttut amisunut upattausuup ilinnaarbi ilagiyawlutik tamakko attortauluara juttut suurlu matuirutingi matui tammalu tamakko attortauga juttut salummarsartauqattariaqarayartu maqquartilluti ullutama taakko hakoqsisautimi kammalu imatuinnarmi taanna 1 minute miqiqartikainnalaorluga allarailaarminnilimaangani.
Other things that we're recommending, frequent washing of hands, either with warm soap and water or with hand sanitizer if soap and water isn't an option. And as always, anyone who has symptoms consistent with a respiratory illness should stay home until they're well and contact the local health center to get checked out.
Taakko aggangi wasain nakattarlugit wasautilikluti mammullu taikko wasauti tahangipalemaq tahangimpadlu taikkununga taikko salwassuunik pitatsiqattarlutik ammalo hanuigutexarsurituaruni suurlu ipinearnartunik angiqarsimahattarlutik taima isumaaluksuriguti annaarbimmunnillu qawyikkailuti uqaalalutik.
You mentioned there, one of the frequent themes of the government is if you're sick, stay home. And with the schools opening up, that doesn't always happen in schools. I'm wondering if school administrations are being given any more instruction or power to tell children with a repetitive hacking cough to go home.
Taakko qanimayugalo angiqqarsimainna kunnaqattangin matapiluartumi ilinnaartiuju taakko ilinnaarbimmi awlatsijingi qanayartini taima sanginertaarti tausimavasuullu khuyersuinnartumi angiqqarusigunnanarmu.
Not from my office. If the Department of Education is working with principals and others to be more rigid about that, that's up to the Department of Education. I'd suggest you ask them.
Taanna kamagiyaungaarayartu ilinnaarniliriyikkunnu taatsumaallabbinga takamagiluangitanga taakkuan alunangittu tilisisimayo qanu malittaugiaqatsiartuni ilinnaarniliriyikkut ilinnaarbimmi qanu ilirutaugiaqalaartuni naluneersimatsialaartu.
The federal COVID-19 tracking app has recently been released, and from a quick look at it, it seems very regional. And I'm wondering, do you see any benefit to Nunavut from using that tracking app?
Ngavamatuhakkunu wajjuarnartumi qawiyisaqutini qarisariakkut saqirtitsisimalangata taanna avittorsimaniuyunu aggutorsimayupaaluuyaanga taanna pipaallerutaussimagu sorigayaqiununavummi.
No, not really. It's especially outside of Iqaluit and other areas, and service goes down with poor weather, even in Iqaluit, as we all experienced this weekend. It it's pretty hard to recommend something like that.
Aga, tanaw lang nakatsa kayang ito. Pilo akto may kaloy sila tani. Silang nilumulo taman na kaya kibukuro tugo piugun ni chao tigi katanga nungwa ni tayo may ilaw may mas sila lulito akay may kaya kibukuro ni katanga tana tayo kalo kayang ito.
Queen, to make for that interpretation. One more for the Premier. Premier Savikataaq, Dr. Patterson just listed off a number of measures the schools are expected to take in order to keep the schools clean so they can open. Other jurisdictions, Ontario, for example, has offered hundreds of millions of dollars to schools to help with these advanced cleaning methods. But as of last week, your government was saying it should be able to be done out of existing funds. I'm wondering, are there any plans to provide more money or cleaning supplies to Nunavut schools in order to get this done?
Savikataaq naluta Patterson o sa katanga ilid niya bita ko salom masaktaw yang lahat kaya niya ngata pakwale pilo akto mi asingin ni Ontario mi pilo akto millions kasangin ni kinaw yan ato inautit si mata salom maksay gutit sa gayak to ni gava magiya sitay mau kayong matatak ko kinaw yan mi ato to inam nam nakasutik pag nasimayo kinaw yan nakakan nga gato inautit sila no.
Thanks, Ken. If the Department of Education feels that they can fund within, then I assume that they have checked it out. But if they need more funds, then more funds would be made available. Our first priority is to keep the students and Nunavut safe. So we spent a lot of money on COVID-related things, and we will continue to spend on COVID-related stuff, and we'll spend it in the school if we need be. But Ken, ilina tulirikut kakiman na patatana kino atong na to halum makay na may ilina may ilo na tama na manakpat na mahiu na magayaw na patana na mangnapo kihani amigang na patana kino yang may tunik kanak tulong na tabot takwa ilina tulirikut taan na hibud lapang matakwa ilina tutibut amo nunubud muyo takwa may nagatsa lagitana nuban na yung 19 tikad lang nipat kano ay tuloy lang yung mata takwa ilina wait ilina charity humaling halumaka chartalo piga kama mata.
Rajani Sharma, Nunavut News. I'm wondering, what is the waiting list like now in Winnipeg, considering another isolation hub has opened?
Rajani Sharma, Nunavut News. Kundi kano tigiw takakataka halaka Winnipeg mitana matuyot daw sumayokak kanilak tiluwas yan ito yung meron. Thanks,
Raj. I just got visual cue that there's no waiting list right now in Winnipeg. Manago Winnipeg mitakwa inutu hibing hinitaw min utakiga kaktatut manaw yok utakiga kang itut iterwak nutan mana inikaktu.
Also, would you happen to know how much money has been spent on isolation hubs up to this point?
Yes,
in total for both the construction hubs and regular medical and travel hubs, just about 21 million has been spent to date. Maana mutikili watakwa inutuhibit hanayato tunu matakwa anyawing nunumuitawak tunu takwa katidlugi inutuhibit 21 million hanyani atokhi malaktugun.
Thank you. A question for Dr. Patterson. Dr. Patterson, with no COVID in the territory, I'm wondering why are restaurants still not open to 100% capacity?
Luta Patterson tamani no bajana to hatin na gusul suli tamani no na bumeta ko summa 100% ngani nerivi me bilu matuing at jangilan.
The concern is that the measures that we have in place aren't foolproof, and until we have a much shorter turnaround time on testing results, if we back off on the measures that we have in place, the impact of COVID-19 arriving and the time it takes to identify it is going to be very significant.
Isimaluti usimamata ko malitaw ka titaw yu tayo ma atangyak tumig lalo na sisimagutaw kung nangin mata Tako utisakay katalawin ni Kauye sa kuti utaman na nuwadyo na katuwi ni Kalawa kayang tayo may matako sulimato ilakit sa mga ito at ang iktumi.
I'm going to try and turn to Nunatsiaq News. Dr. Patterson, you just announced a number of people who can apply to be critical workers, such as our MP and our MLAs. Why were these people not considered essential or critical workers before now?
I'm trying to know that second niluta Patterson tako pimario yung kanaya haktu pilot to make it to ye maligali obidyo ami malu maligali okti so masibok nga gutay manalo na tao si maningin lan.
The MP and Senator had been listed already. We needed to include MLAs as well. Our initial plan had been to, when we realized the oversight, had been to just grant them exemptions under the compelling reason if needed, but we wanted to be transparent and above board and make sure it was obvious.
Kigap to ye maligali obidyo ami ambalo ituk kuvi me kigap to ye tako titiras malok to galo kasi ani maligali okti titirat tao sa Manila ngim matataan na surulak pami pamatao sa malaw sa mayumini galo kasi ani puigok tao nang atako kuya na tao sa makay na nak to pidyo tikat sa lo titako lo to kasi nat sa to ni kamagayaw sa makulaw katigo.
So why are MLAs now added to the list? Do they need to travel south very often? What is the reason for including MLAs on that list at this point?
Sumbalita ko maligali okti kanlunano kataka hamningin no tako ilagili uti yaulitay nakan.
Some do. More often, my understanding is cabinet ministers need to travel south for provincial, federal meetings. So it's to allow that work to continue without impairing things too much for government function.
Ilang itay ma lahat taga hangata pilo tumita ko minister yo kawa mato hakkuno tamalo kallunane ukiyok tak tumelo avitok simabiyo yo tako katima hatta tillugi katima hatta hatta hangata kawa makkupili rangin ni pili hatta hamningin mo tay ma lahat taga nakita ni alakto.
Question for the Premier. Do you have any update on funding for airlines at this point? Has there been more discussions? Are there any talks about additional funding for Nunavut's airlines?
To sapit sigaro na kayulo mi mo tako hangata juli ko kino yak tak taw sa malang mga taw kakatigi taw sa mabata man nakakaning ko kino yak tak taw na mga ta.
Thanks, Emma. We just had a phone call with one of the airlines last week. And we agreed that we're going to join forces to try to get Transport Canada to come up with a compensation package or assistance package sooner. And that's the main reason we haven't come up with a package yet, because we're waiting on the federal government, because they said that one is coming and we're still waiting. Taik pakani ulah tu tak kuating mihuliri kud Iqaluit kud katimakat tigilaw tigo taik katimani kapta humali ulah tu kud kating alu tu tak kua federal government kud ayah ni atabut ayah ni atabut tak kua ikayokolu tak kua ting mihokak tu no. Utak kena kalau apa tu tak mana huli kena mit nuit sifat lengi mata ukak kalau tu tak kau kena ya kayu kalau kena ukak kemangi tu huli kakunya mangat kanu angin tigidnya mangat.
After that meeting, did you reach an agreement on a certain sum of money that you're seeking? Can you tell us more about the conversations you had in terms of what you're looking for from the federal government?
Katimalaw tilo si nalo na tawlo kakino yak tam ng mga sita ko tut sirakta sinni kapamatuhat ko ni tut nireukan ng naki.
We don't have a percentage or a figure in mind, but all I know is it has to be better than what we got last time. Last time we paid about 500% more, if I remember correctly. We paid $5 million and they paid $5 million and we paid about $20 million, and it was quite lopsided. So our goal is to have it much better than that. And the end goal is to help the airlines in their time of needs. Mana yo ta nakina yo kano angiti yumi ubalu bakap pinita ko government to kakko akilina mga ta maubago kapini akilina mga ta nalunay ngitabuhuli kaya nakawi mayugutan na king type paminulaw to ta nakina ta kaya law tabut ilakina atulaw tabuting mihuli kilomikilo alawman ubago 20 million mi atokso ta amatay kwa government qatput 5 million mi atokso ta na aqawmat chana kuna hauti piuna kami ma nakina mi piwat ila angin na kami piuna kami piwat government qatpuni
Matty Sarvé, Radio Canada. So Minister Higgs said last week that you were considering the possibility to create a travel bubble with Nunavut. Can you tell us what's the stage of the discussions and how far this idea is from now?
Matty Sarvé, Minister Higgs, so kayo mapinasa ko si Jumita ko lakati hatakbi gumnang na mga Nunavut amalo Nunavut.
Thanks. We've had a couple of discussions, communications with mayors in the communities most affected by that bubble. Their request is that we put the idea on hold for now and we'll revisit it again in a week or two.
Pilok tu may yung nunalita ko at totoo na pangugayak tut aw lahat tabi ng mga ata tut sakak sa mayo taman na kuya nataw kay nak simahulog wa malo hausu kan ne kum nalalo ne ataw simakulo ni pinasa ko sinas malak pati.
So people who receive an isolation exemption, like some essential workers, are sometimes sharing their plane with a regular member of the public. I know that they have to self-isolate when they arrived in the territory, but there is still a possibility that they can transmit the virus if they have it in the plane with other Nunavummiut. So what's the point of asking an isolation if there's a risk of transmission in the plane?
Gatung itu kaya nataw sa magutilipi magayunay kanayalit ataw tsiko hanga tayo may katiyo lakatang atatama nga tikit Nunavut miunut tamani nutuga ham na kalawak kay nang na kalawak tilugit kis malak tilugit kisani sa magbiuto na hanga tayo may taman na lay sumat ato tihak suriwa singin ni Nunavut miunut hanga titaw hatak tilugit.
The people granting people who've been granted an exemption are sitting in a different part of the plane, so they're still physically separated when they're sitting down in the plane. With that, and wearing the masks and the interviews that the airlines are doing to exclude people who have symptoms, and the work we're doing to manage the risk, we feel that the risk is small enough that it's still justifiable with what we're doing right now.
Tako ako yan na kaya nakotiw si Mayot ima inutugi ato kaya nakatagay atong iluti tako at sige ila asingin na hanga tayo may kating akatangin mata abanit sa na hanga tayo may galo at tilugit ang malo matawak si Mayot nakataksutik tako alo hanga tayo liri apek so katang ata kanoy guti hangi kalo ang mga tatamak ko awlak panlaya na akto taman na awla tayo kung naksurit kung nakatigo ulo kaya nakto nga tayo may mat pidyo te kaksuri yabo tayo may kung naktitaw nga. And
what if there's no social distancing in the plane? What if there's no seat separating each person from one another?
We audit the manifests in the airlines and have been auditing them periodically for a while, and the vast majority of the time it's an exempted worker sitting beside an exempted worker when that happens, and the airlines have been trying to achieve that almost all of the time. So I understand the concern, but it's much less of an issue than people might be thinking it is.
Tako how you sakatak si mamagi hanga tayo may kimanakto nalo na tayo si maguting ititirak si mayo tamak ko tikigong nakti tayo si mayo inutuga atong nikay na kaya hak si maluti ma itsiba katigi katang ato tayo may tusay namit hanga tayo may Takwalo tayo mga limahan at yung lagi malitaw kaya katanga takatitit si tayo titamak kuninga isumalo tiulo suring kita kataman na isumalo tiulo ring iman.
So considering that a lot of people who have COVID-19 are not showing any symptoms at this point, why are you keeping the isolation hubs down south, and why aren't you switching to tests instead?
Tako kikutuin na no badyo anak to haktin na gambalo kano iguti hakto haktin na go sumay no to view titaw hatta hatidyo me binni kallo nani ini to kay nakahat titaw nga hatta kakaya saktaw nga hatta lutillikya.
The testing people who have no symptoms has a very high rate of false negatives. Depending upon how many days after they've been exposed, it falls to about 2/3 when they're already shedding. So if we tested everybody and said, okay, your test is negative, you don't have to isolate, that will let COVID into the territory. And other jurisdictions, other places that have done that have discovered that testing is a negative result is not a good substitute for isolation.
Tako kano iguti hakto yang Iqaluit lugi tako tamma ko taw simagun nang ata kaya sa ko timiningit katsini ullo ni naalaw tilugi tay ma sama palyatit sigun na sa tigisung matay ma no badyo anak tuhangin nakaktaw galawang lutik tay may matay ko ino tutitaw kay nakatam ni tay ma kaw nakpangam mataman na no badyo anak isi ko nagut amawat Nunavut asingin ni awitok si mabiyo ni kawai si mayo tay ma kawai sa kaso nga hatta so titaman na ato te si mangim matay ma kano iguti hakto yang itu galo siya makit si balyali kung nakatak si mamata.
Thank you. Can you resume us again? What's the process if someone starts showing symptoms in territory?
Kano malitaw galing ni nalo na sigun nakita man ino na bumi tay ma kano iguti haksukin ni rutino na bumi kano ilo kakayang mga ta.
The first thing is isolate themselves if they're out and about, get home or get out of the public so that there's less chance of transmitting it to somebody else.
Tako sibulak pa mino tu chau tigi khatarlu tangi qasimat chau tigi laglu titay masa matitsingin naksaw gayang ngata.
And then as soon as they can, contact their local health center and arrange for assessment and or testing. And then they need to be isolated until the symptoms resolve and the swab results come back.
Kaya kayo tilo nunalin na nabing ano tako kaya saktaw gayak tapos saktaw lunilunit o balo kaya sakutit sa may awlak titaw yut sa may persevere lunit ako inutungin na kaya kayak to tayo makano igut ka niyang mini tanaw tilawin nilimangin ni kaya sakutit yun nalo na tayo gaswam nga.
I meant more like regarding the testing, the government side. Like what's the process?
Okay.
What do you mean?
Like when the person is isolating, what are the next steps after? How are you dealing with the case?
Kano tako agava makukamahatak kakawin sa kutiyo yun ita ko inutuga haktitaw yun ni kano ilo.
Specific to testing?
Yeah.
The swab is collected. It's swabs collected by placing something that looks like a Q-tip into the back of somebody's nose, and then the sample is sent for the appropriate testing, which right now involves sending the samples, almost all of them, to the south, either Ontario, Manitoba, or Alberta, and then they analyze it there, and we get the results back.
Kawin sa kutipid yung tigil lugita ko sulog Q-tip yung dakto siyo timog sulong ano tabong alo ungatanok persibi ula ulo nita na awlak titaw talik ko kawin sa katsayok kalo na ano awlak titaw katak to Ontario mo Manitoba mo Alberta mo luni.
So just to be sure, do you still analyze the tests in Iqaluit and ranking before sending them down south?
Tukisit siya nga atak ko kalo ni rank kaya sinang melo kawin saktaw kay nakakatak medyo.
Again, it's a small number that qualifies for that because we have limited capacity for currently have limited capacity for the rapid testing in territory. We're doing those for the highest risk situations, but the majority are getting sent straight south for testing and not being tested in territory.
Ilain nang ikatsin na kuloy tamane kawi saktaw katakto tako nalo na taw si manlaking iningano kawi sakutit tako alo kilamiyuyuk ko kawi saktaw yung kakakaktil lugo tako atok taw yut sa mango titaw mata kisani ulukan ang nakpamis na wilarip tako atok taw katakon nakto tamane kalon ni kanang sinakbilog kisani amisunak sa kalonano alak titaw katakto kawi sakot say.
Jackie McKay, CBC News. Dr. Patterson, for the new exemptions of government workers, when they're not conducting business they came here to do, are they supposed to be at home or are they able to go to the grocery store, that sort of thing?
Jackie McKay, CBC Kunit Luta Patterson. Tana nuta nalo na koya kuya na taw si makay na kum na niyo gava makunik kanayak tinut. Ang ikasibay na katara kaya karo balusur lunu verbin munu vera katara na kaya.
Yeah, for any elected official given an exemption, the expectation is that they isolate when they're not at work, meaning they stay home. Exempted workers are allowed one trip a week to grocery store to pick up supplies if there's nobody else who can pick them up for them. Otherwise, they should be staying at home and self-isolating.
Tamakko ni ko taw si mayo ko yan ako taw kay nakatak ila ko taw nakakayak ka ko ang akas makatak lipi yon nang nilima minit kanay yang ito ako tik tako alo pinasa ko si ilo na taw sa lutik niu bili ka taw nak titaw yon nakita ka to luti asi mino pigud sa nang ikutik kasi ani tako ang akas magahak titaw hatam na to.
How much longer are we going to have isolation hubs?
Kano tigikan ni tamakko to yung mi vino to view titaw yon mato yung hatam na kan.
We don't know when we get the testing capacity in territory where we can get a reasonable turnaround time on all results, and we'll be shifting towards isolation at home.
Kaya mangitok tako kaya sakuti nalo na sumatsalik katam maluti sa kaya katakon naksimbat pata tako inutuga kay nakitaw to nakatakon naksigayak to ang kangin ni.
My next question is for the Premier. With the amount of money spent on isolation hubs, are you just able to keep that up forever, or are you going to have to cut other government services to be able to keep paying for it?
Tako kino ya kasi atok taw katatil luwi to yung may binino tubyo kay nakalin ni ang umatigon nang nakasi ang baluasingin ni nakatiriga kalila kasi ka ba makukino yak to tingin ni.
Thank you, Jackie. We've been using our money plus the federal government money that we got for the initial COVID relief funds, and we've got a northern support package that we're working right now. Plus, we are going to get some money from the Safe Restart package that's being offered to all the territories and provinces, and we don't know exactly what can be spent on what yet, but that'll all be tallied up, and we're hoping that it won't hit us too bad financially with the help from the federal government. But na Jackie ta na kino yak atok tataw na inutuhing mo kino ta alok megap the government to kakuni makina ta kanang national ta na kano ta kwa ukwak ta palle Nunavut ilo ani kino ta na ta federal government to kakuni ta na tu malago kino ya tu malago mahana mutikid de kawin nang ito huli kapini ta kino pinit atong na mga ta kihanata na kawi hay nang natawut ana nuban na yak kanu kahukahik patana kaya kakaluglu ni ukiolo ni kawin na sa roma ta na kanukti kino yung ato kino pinato mga ta.
I think COVID has proven that there's money available when money is needed. Where has this been in previous calls for mental health resources in Nunavut or housing?
Taman na nova na kaya naksimam makina ye ato inaw sikal lato alo katam ninginit tamati mo lagi ay sumalaki ng mo tamakko ato inaw titaw naktusaw giban.
Thank you. The money for mental health, we do spend a decent amount of money on it, and we will continue. As for housing, we spend about $83 million a year on housing, and so far in COVID we have not hit that, and hopefully we won't. And a lot of this money that we are getting for COVID-related products are issues, I guess, and projects that we're doing is coming from the federal government. We are, make no mistake, we are spending our money, and we hadn't planned for it, but a lot of this money we're hoping will be reimbursed from the federal government. I matnata na kinaw yak ihumalaning mut ukyutama na kinaw yak kadlat yang matok ta hoktu anta na kinaw yang mut ihumamut anya tailiti sidang mut atong na ta buhulitan ukyutama ama igloya liang na mut agawutama 83 million kalung mi atohopta ta na nuban na ya huli atung inaptu atung itu ten ya 83 million mi.
Is the Nunavut legislature planning on sitting in September?
Nunavut may maligali up to September may katimalaktot sawan.
Yes, we are. They're planning to sit there to supplement the June sitting that we missed. So we will be sitting in September. It won't be called the fall sitting. I'm not sure what it will be called, but we will be sitting in September for same duration as we would have in June. Itan magtakpat September mitakwa tabani Iqaluit ikiwanela migata takwa maligaleo ti Iqaluit katimayo malang migata September mitana June mikatimang itay nakapta ta na pidukti lugo September katimagumalak ti tabani.
This question comes from the Facebook Live. It's from Trevor Thompson, who's been in an isolation hub in Winnipeg for 13 days. He said there's still no traditional food in the isolation hub and wants to know when that will happen.
Trevor kinaw katakya ta na Winnipeg may tuyok may bimino tu bimiti tayo kat ko alugo inulik tayo ni Jesuli atoy na ang mata ka nga atoy na ulak mga ta.
Thank you. Currently, right now, country food is available at the Ottawa hub, and we're still working on the Winnipeg hub to get country food available there. We're working with NTI, and country food will be available, just not quite there yet. Maana yota na Ottawa mitakwa inui nakingit maana taika ni nakayawun nakto kayawun nakto. Dan huli pilira kaya Winnipeg mitakwa taika ni inutuhing mitut. Inui nakingin nakita tang na mata nakayak hangin nit piliraya huli kalamit na pening nilak tu ila kalamit na nakita tu la ta umalak tu galoy.
I'm trying to turn to Nunatsiaq News. Question for Dr. Patterson. Dr. Patterson, you announced that GN offices will be open to the public next week, but nothing in the high-risk measures category in Nunavut's path has been announced. When will you announce that those restrictions will be lifted?
I'm a tranter. Luta Patterson tako na luna kaya dit. Nunavuga pa makungi mati kung nalalam tiluwi kiko tuin nam luta ko luga nak tumin nak paruta kung nak tunaluna tawlang matasuli kanga naluna tawlang sorry.
Those ones we'll be looking at once we have reliable, sustainable testing capacity in territory.
Tako kima kutsa na la tabukisi ani kaya sa kutitsa natin nakatsali kutatamani no na bumi.
What's the turnaround time for testing right now?
Kano tigiliw takikisi kaya sa kutiyo yun utak palani.
The average is typically about 7 days.
Uloy 7 go kayo katakto.
With a wide range depending upon the community and the flight schedule.
Lajige katangit yun alani nga tutino na linya malokano kanga ko kanga tayo katangin lajige katangit.
And a lot of your responses have talked about testing, and we need better testing capacity in order to end the isolation hubs and open these other measures. When will that happen? When will we have reliable testing in the territory?
Kiwin na hatta kabitay mga kawin sa kuti katsala kakisya ni taman na asidjik tayo gayang ningin ni malit tayo kakti tayo tako alam ato jaw gumnak silutino tubiyo ti tayo kangak ko ato inakulang at kawin sa tsaya kuti yun.
Again, I don't know. There's a number of people who are working really hard to get the machines up and running and validated, but it takes time, and in this circumstance, bad information is going to be worse than no information. So we're stuck with where we are at the moment, and as soon as we can get there, we will make the announcements and make some changes.
Hauja mangittungaila takko amisuugalo takko ninga pilira hartunalo na jega so harto hauja sauti unik tamanna piyare atumanila akune utauga harsuni takko tamartuni tukisiga rutini pigo makatangin natta kasi tukisigo titsani tamas mangituni pikattale rutta tay mama nakikato na kay nardahamna.
And I understand the desire for a firm date, but it's some of these things are outside of our control. It depends on the worldwide supply and other factors that make it impossible to accurately predict a firm date.
Hangaw kayang mga ulungan ito sa kumayo kaktugal kasi ani taman na lagun nangin natigo pilo akto meluno nakjoale mami amigaksim matatamak ko nga hawi sa kutiyo unit ay may man ulungan ni nalo na sigun nang itsala taktugo.
Anybody else? If not, I just also want to remind people that we will still be doing some weekly updates online. So numbers, anything that's come about that's not urgent, we'll be posting that online as well as social media. Okay, thanks. Have a great August.
Pinaso ako sa mga tako tusakti sa katala nga yugo kakisaw yak ko kisiani ang malul khatsiw ning inni kakisaw yak ko kaya kibiko hawiga taw katakon nak nakta.